apologize to the staff for keeping you all waiting. We're going to start as soon as we have a quorum. I will be convening the special meeting so that Van can talk to the press about the ILIA press release. And we're going to get on with regular business. We're not going to let this stop us. Okay? We're still waiting on 2 board members. No, 1. Melanie. Do you know where Melanie is?
Yeah, she's on her way up there.
Okay. Thank you. I hope I don't need it, but we'll see. We're going to keep it all real tight over here, okay? We're going to keep it all tight over here. There we are. All right. Oh, no problem. Oh, no, I was hoping everyone could sit nice and close.
I don't want to be all.
There are more chairs than we need. There are more chairs than we need. Okay. Are we ready to get started? Everybody comfortable? Okay, thank you once again for all in the audience who waited for us. I appreciate your patience with us. We're ready to start the special meeting. We have 3 resolutions. For starters, I'd like to take Resolution 659 and 660, contract extensions.
Yeah, motion to table.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner LeBron and a second from Commissioner Funches. That is a non-debatable motion. This is a table to when? Which is till the Thursday board meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Non-debatable. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. The next resolution on our docket is the 2018-19 school calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hallmark, second from Commissioner Funches. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. The motion carries. That takes us to the budget presentation, starting with East High School EPO. Thank you, Sean and
Carlene.
Carlene, for coming out. Don't feel you need to stay through the other half unless you find that highly entertaining.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'll support Bob.
she says if she has to stay through yours, you have to stay through hers.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is Carlene Pierce. She works in our finance department and supports some of the HR functions at East. And we're going to walk through the budget. And we chose to do it the same as last year with a little twist. I think it's important that we give a little bit of history of the EPO for some of the new board members. Just reminds those in the audience how we got to this place. We're going to talk about the budget development process and then work our way through some of the program enhancements and cuts and decisions that we're going to make going into next year. In 2014-15, the school district was placed in a unique situation based on several years of success in some areas at East, but many areas where they needed improvement. The state education department decided to put the school into a receivership model. There were several models that could have been considered. One was to close East altogether, but it is a school that is important to our community, and I thought that would have been a horrible option, and so did the board, thankfully. To become a charter school, we know that many charter schools do not function in the secondary setting to begin. They typically start in elementary school, and if they choose to grow out, they grow out one grade level at a time. Operate under a SUNY system, State University of New York. To phase out, that process had been tried in the past, where you remove half the students and half the staff and filter them throughout the district, or to go into an educational partnership organization. At that time, there were main discussions between the school board, the state education department, and the University of Rochester, and the decision was for University of Rochester to become its receiver. What's a little different about the EPO is that there are some changes that can be made similar to any other receivership model. Some of those changes are listed here. To make changes to the school budget, in which the board adopted 3 years ago, to look at school program and curriculum. The whole idea around this was to incubate at a site, to share those practices throughout the district and throughout other schools in receivership throughout the state. We would require staff to reapply for their positions. And again, the list goes on to expand the school year and school day. And so our budget reflects many of these interventions to address the critical needs of our students from an academic, a socio-emotional, and a restorative practice lens. The model that we use is to really do a deep dive into our needs and the needs of the student. So we started with an intense root cause analysis to determine how to best serve our students, our staff, and our larger community. Once those issues were identified, we began to look for effective practices, both locally and nationally. We took time to design the plan, and we continue to refine that based on the academic outcomes of our students and the identified needs of our staff and community. We also then look at the results and determine which programs to continue, which ones to modify, and which ones to eliminate. And so you'll see towards the end of this presentation that we look at our professional development. We've cut there significantly. And also, over time, we have expanded some of our contracts with certain agencies who have a proven track record of supporting our kids in local contexts, as well as eliminating others where we did not see their impact in our school. This is our efforts are aligned to a diagnostic tool for school and district effectiveness. This is the tool that is used to evaluate our progress and to set demonstrable indicators. And this tool focuses on several categories listed on the left, starting with district leadership, which would be my position, and then going down from school leadership to curriculum teaching, our socio-emotional, school-wide partnerships, and then we added student life, because we thought student voice was extremely important in assessing how schools function, and particularly how our school function at East. Some of the major initiatives that have been funded over the years are listed. The distributed leadership model is a model in which we took away this notion that the principal was a single heroic figure, and we wanted to make sure that we empower teachers and staff and other administrators to own the success and the failure of the school equally. We thought that investing in that is where we had to intensify our professional learning opportunities and professional development. We had to expand the number of teacher leaders so that when consultants go away, that the knowledge stays within the school community and can hopefully spread throughout the larger district as a whole. that aligning and improving our career and technical education programs to give kids an opportunity for a different pathway towards graduation was critically important, as well as students identified that our CTE programs was something that hooked them into school their 9th grade year and carried them through to their senior year. In fact, the vast majority, over 90% of our kids involved and who continue and finish the CTE program actually graduate from East. And then again, other programs are listed there as part of our major initiatives, which are funded through the A funds at the district, but also through grants. What's critically important for us, and we were charged by the board to do this several years ago, is to build capacity so we're not dependent on external resources. And the budget we're going to present tonight will demonstrate that we've tried to do that. We continue to look for ways to trim the budget and to take as many dollars as we can and put it back into the hands of our staff and our students. So this is our enrollment entering next year. You'll see that there are 999 scholars who are at East this year, and that's basically that is due to the low enrollment of kids in 6th grade. Just to remind the board, 2 years ago, we entered into an agreement with School 33 with the purpose of having the number of 6th graders increase so that we could reach our desired enrollment goal of 1,200. For the upcoming year, we're really proud to announce that we already have 1,150 kids enrolled who will be enrolled next year at East. Our 6th graders increased from 23, as you see on that chart, to 110 applicants for the upcoming school year. So I thank the board for aligning and creating an MOU with 33, but I have to be clear and say that the majority of those kids, that 110, are not from School 33. They're from all over the district. And so we will probably anticipate those 50 available seats, getting to 160 being problematic for those kids at School 33. We're going to continue to work with the district, communications department, and placement to ensure that parents at 33 truly understand that they have first rights of refusal if they go from grades 5 to grade 6. After that, it becomes open to a lottery system, and we don't want to exclude students from 33, but it has to be really, really clear. We hired 4 community members to target these elementary kids to make sure parents truly understand what their rights are and that they can make thoughtful decisions entering the school year. But we are happy to say that we will be fully staffed with students and with fully staffed, and also our enrollment will be at 100% next year. So that's a huge accomplishment for those folks working on in our community to get parents to attend. Professional development was another point of emphasis for East. We continue to do that through intensive training over the summer, spring, and fall. But we thought that entering year 4 is important for us to reduce professional development in its current state by reducing the contracts. So you'll see that our goal is to reduce about 30% of our professional development from outside consultants and to focus our efforts on building capacity internally so teachers are now turnkeying the work themselves. That was mentioned 3 years ago that we would do that professional development at that current rate would not be sustainable. It was to shock the system, to help rewrite curriculum, to improve instruction, and then to turn it over to the hands of administrators and teacher leaders to continue the work. And we're fortunate to have teacher leaders who are willing and ready to carry on what they've learned over the last 3 years. You'll also see a reduction in the final budget book for our contracted services. Again, we said to the board 3 years ago that the contracts would be scrutinized based on effectiveness, how they enhance the learning opportunities for our students and our staff. So you'll see that our year-over-year contractual services will be reduced by 25% entering next year. And I wanted to just make a special emphasis that within that 25% that we drastically cut the University of Rochester's contract. The last 3 years, they primarily helped support professional development through the Warner Center. So we wanted to make sure that, again, in the spirit of turnkey training and building capacity, that those services should not be sustainable or sustained over time, that they should be turnkeyed and become owned by the staff at East. This is our proposed budget, year-to-year change. I do want to just make the board aware that in 2015-16, we were able to return about $5.5 million to the district because we did not fully staff the school based on student enrollment. Also, we found some efficiencies by securing grants, and we did the same in 2016-17 by about $2.6 million, and we anticipate this year returning over 1.2. We haven't reconciled some of the grant funds and operating efficiencies yet, but we anticipate having additional savings this year also. So I just thought it was important for the board and the community to know that we are fiscally prudent and thoughtful about how we spend dollars to ensure a better environment for our students and our staff. That's it for East.
Thank you. To my colleagues, this is typically a time where we don't ask questions. We wait until we've received our budget book and come back with our written questions to be submitted prior to our first deliberation session. But thank you so much for your presentation, Sean and
Thank you.
Arlene. Madam Superintendent? We're over to you now.
So when I turn the page over, you flip it forward, okay? Thank you. No, that's all. So when I turn this down, so when I turn the page over, we'll get it stuff. Okay. You good?
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yep, thank you.
All right. So tonight, Chief Financial Officer Everton Sewell and I will present the budget for the district. But before we begin, I want to thank the entire team who has worked over the last few weeks to close potential gaps and to prioritize the budget around the areas of focus for the district. So as you know, our mission is to serve every student by face and name in every school, every classroom, to and through graduation. This is more than just a slogan. It's a commitment to personalized learning, to understanding a child, their family, their strengths and their needs, and building a system of schools who can respond to each child so that we can ensure that every child can achieve grade level standards and on-time graduation. The district has worked to focus our coherence on the PELP framework. Some of you are familiar with this from when we began some of this work 18 months ago, that our focus is ensuring that the district office serves schools. Our goal is to ensure that every school reflects the neighborhood it serves, the students it serves, and the family it serves, and that we have some common themes in terms of high expectations, access to rigorous and challenging curriculum, authentic learning environments, and a great relationship between our teachers, the students, and what goes on in the classroom. Our theory of change is that our role is to support those schools to ensure high-quality teaching and learning, parent engagement, and engaged students. You're going to see some of the strategies tonight that we continue, and just so that we're able to further engage in this work, Rochester has been admitted to the Harvard University Public Education Leadership Project for the 2018 cohort, so we'll be one of 12 school districts that will be working directly with them in July to further the work. During this spring, as a result of Path Forward, we began to focus on some of the things that you're going to see, themes that you're going to see continue in the budget. One is early hiring. We began an early hiring initiative focusing on ensuring that we hire teachers, leaders, and employees that reflect the students and this community that we serve. We also have committed to rebuilding zone capacity. We know that we need to expand special education programs by zone, bilingual and dual language programs, community schools, and social emotional learning supports. And you're also going to see a commitment to pop-up student registration centers so that we don't have to go back and build full standalone parent engagement centers in each zone, but that we're able to use pop-up registration centers in areas where we see the greatest needs of new students and families that require more direct services. I'm going to refer to a framework for our investments. We've organized our investments around 6 major themes, none of which will be new to you, all of which we have committed to as part of our comprehensive district education planning and school-based plans. So those will be a focus on community schools, meaningful parent engagement in invitational schools, student agency and access, school climate transformation, powerful teaching and learning, and employees as empowered partners. The framework or the gears are designed to model that without these things working together, we're not going to see the improvement that we want to see for all of our students. So it's very important that we fund all of these things and activate them in a way that allows for powerful support for our students. So I'm just going to review each of these, and Everton is going to outline further how these are supported in the budget. Every school is a community school. Every school is expected to have a sound core instructional program, comprehensive student support services, and opportunities for students that extend beyond the school day in the classroom. The degree to which schools are able to expand those with rich community resources, additional medical and dental services, or additional support services dependent on the grants. And currently we have grant funding for 10 schools, but all schools are expected to have the critical components of a community school. We intend to continue to use the grants to follow the model of School 17, but to allow each school to design a program that fits the students and community they serve. Invitational education and meaningful parent engagement. We are building towards invitational education. There was a cohort of parent representatives and district representatives that participated in that training next year and are serving now to turnkey the training throughout all of our schools. The Community Engagement and Parent Engagement Office will be supporting the pop-up parent centers to make access and support available throughout the community. We're expanding Parent University, and the Parent Engagement team is launching a quarterly newsletter, so their budget continues to support an expansion of parent engagement activities. We've just hired a Director of Youth Engagement and Cultural Relations. That individual will help build out additional development of student agency and access. We want to have an expanded opportunity for student voice and choice. So next year there will be 4 planned student summits. Those are during the half-day early releases. We're going to expand the District Student Leadership Congress. You're going to see in the budget some expanded athletic opportunities for students, as well as peer tutoring, natural helpers, restorative practices, and peer mediators in the work that's led by Ruth Turner and her team. Before I came to Rochester, there was a large community task force engaged in very critical work of school climate transformation. The budget over the past several years has been dedicated to ensuring that that work be driven into the fabric and culture of each and every school. So in that spirit, in this budget, there is mandatory professional learning dedicated to that transformation, and every employee will be receiving training on the spirit and content of the code of conduct, implicit bias training, restorative practice, and the relationship model of intervention. We have a variety of induction programs, superintendent's conference days, and early release days that will allow us to frame that. And in addition, we are creating a model where all new employees receive the implicit bias training as a condition of their employment. We also, through the work of the restorative practice and school climate transformation teams in the district, have many schools that are involved in rock restorative, going deeper with the application of the work, and also our Victorious Minds Academy, which is a deeper relationship model between students, parents, family, and school. And that work continues with Dr. Joy DeGrew. So we wanted to make sure that we're building in for schools and school communities that are going beyond an awareness, but moving and driving into deeper work. They will then serve as professional leaders and professional development leaders for other schools that want to move into that work in the future. So again, using initial professional development to ensure that our staff become leaders and professional developers in the future. There's also a focus on school attendance improvement that continues, safe and healthy schools, and we are going to strongly work with our schools to expand their guidance and student advisory programs, home-based guidance, homerooms, family groupings, or other such models that allow our teachers and our staff to develop close relationships with smaller groups of students and their families. And we hope to include home visits in that model. Powerful learning is extremely, extremely important. This is where you're going to see us in the budget, and I'm going to go through a little more of this because I know that Dr. Guillory was not able to do a presentation last time, so I want to be very clear about what is included in his teaching and learning budget. You may know that New York State is introducing the next generation learning standards, and the New York State Education Department has outlined the expectation for all districts, training all teachers, and getting our students ready, working with our families and our parents over the next 3 years. We also have 15 robust programs that are ongoing in the district. The Literacy for the Lifetime program, which is culturally and linguistically authentic curriculum, started this year in earnest. That's in addition to the work being done by Dr. Susan Goodwin and our teachers at the Rochester Teacher Center. Special education, ELL and bilingual, and CTE programs, again, are being restored and designed by zone to basically ensure that regardless of where a child lives, that there will be a full continuum of special education and services for them and their family so that they don't have to transfer to multiple schools or across the city. We also have continued our strong commitment for summer learning, which originally started in Rochester as a Wallace grant. Rochester is well known as a summer learning leader, and we want to make sure that we continue to honor that practice because it's so important for our children. Started last year, we will continue with an expansion of advanced placement, seeking to encourage all students to try their very best and to ensure that students have full and complete not only access but support to advanced placement courses and more rigorous and challenging curriculum. Our English 4 program is becoming a mosaics program modeled after another local school district where our students and teachers have been in contact with them so that they can continue to focus on the kinds of topics and conversations about diversity and race and gender and class and things that are important to our seniors. So we're going to have that available next year, as well as the Pan-African Studies and Latino Studies that are in the course handbooks and are being monitored by Dr. Guillory and his team to make sure that we have students that are enrolled and that those courses are fully funded. We are going to continue a system-wide focus on literacy for a lifetime. Our partnership with Dr. Daggett and his team, again, ensuring that that is culturally and linguistically responsive and that the professional development and the curriculum go hand in hand. You'll see that we have had to make some difficult decisions with regard to teacher instructional coaches later in the budget, but that we are working very hard to find ways to restore what we consider to be an integral part of our program. Again, special education, bilingual education, English language learner instruction, career and technical education, the community as a classroom, which is internships and externships, are included in the teaching and learning initiatives and in their goals, and are funded in this grant, in this budget. New this year and continuing next year is our work with Dr. Noma Lemoyne in expanding our efficacy with standard English learners, working with children of African heritage and African language heritage to ensure that we are culturally sensitive and responsive in terms of doing assessments on young children that may have the unintended consequence of placing them in remedial programs as opposed to recognizing their strengths and cultural differences and building upon those in very powerful ways in terms of the pedagogy of confidence and a pedagogy of strength-based learning. The reading and writing at pre-K 2, in addition to the work being done by Dr. Goodwin, many of our schools are using the Lucy Calkins units in writing, having some great success, and so we have continued the work and the funding for them as well as summer learning and our ELT time, which in some schools, as you know, is not just additional reading and writing, but includes arts and music and other kinds of drama activities for students. The digital transformation plan is funded. That's the work that's been led for a number of years. The Zern math implementation, all of the pre-K 3 reading that's in place is still in the budget. The revised social studies curriculum at grade 4, 8, and 11. We have an initiative to look at some of the American history at those grade levels. And Dr. Gilry has been leading a revision of the teaching and learning materials to ensure that they are historically accurate and consistent with the values and beliefs of the district and our families, and that they meet student needs. We have continued our quality preschool programs and early education programs and aligned them with school communities so that we can have our preschoolers stay in their neighborhood schools and be moved into the K-2 program so that we have a great pre-K to grade 2 or 3 continuum of teachers that are able to work together to serve children by face and name. I can't say enough about the work of the Rochester Teacher Center, Dr. Susan Goodwin, with the K-2 self, family, and community curriculum. We have a number of individuals that are implementing that, a number of schools that are currently doing school-wide implementation, and it is part of the curriculum that we will use in our RISE schools so that any school that's closed and reopened, like at Kodak Park, will be using that curriculum for their students. We also have in the budget expanded arts, music, and athletic opportunities. There's always a desire to do more, so you'll see where we have some ideas to do more if we get some additional funding, but we were able to continue to support the athletic programming from modified to JV to varsity in the areas that were growing, and I believe there was a request for 4 athletic directors and that we have been able to fund 2.
Yes.
Thank you. The last is employees as empowered partners. It is critical that we get hiring and recruitment right here. It's important that we hire early, that we hire the kind of talented teachers and employees that we need that are very, very committed to the city schools, the children, and our families. We want to ensure that our induction programs reflect our need to ensure that we have mandatory training and implicit bias, as well as a deep understanding of Rochester's cultural history and racial heritage. And we want to ensure that both our new teacher and new leader induction programs include that content, and we have people working on that to ensure that that's a model that we can all be proud of. Rochester has been a leader for years nationally in quality mentoring. We have one of the first career and teaching mentoring programs in the country. I was really pleased to see that that program was very intact when I came, and is foundationed on the work of a lot of people over many years, as well as our career and administration and supervision mentoring program. Having the kind of support for early career teachers and early career administrators is critical. We also know that principal mentoring, according to the research, is absolutely vital. The principal is instructional leader, and the ability for them and their instructional leadership teams to engage parents and children in powerful ways is indeed the only way that we're going to improve schools and results for Rochester. I'm proud that Rochester has looked at the national research and understands the importance of ongoing mentoring and supervision of principals, and has committed to a school chiefs model that allows each chief to work with 10 to 13 principals and program administrators on a regular and routine basis, where they can spend about 60% of their time directly in the schools supporting our principals and our instructional leadership teams. And we also have a 2-year assistant principal mentoring, so that when assistant principals are moved from teaching or counseling positions into the role of assistant principal, that we're ensuring that they have the kind of support and operational support that they need to be effective. In addition to that, we continue to invest in the training and support for all cabinet and executive cabinet members, as well as our principals, assistant principals. And in the past 2 years, 3 years, we've included parents, community members, and students in the 5-day leadership retreat that's funded as well. And we continue to fund an Office of Professional Learning and have a teacher resource center that's funded through the Rochester Teachers Association. The formal pipeline work, the Career and Leadership 12-month pipeline to the principalship, recently announced that we have 8 graduates of that program. That means we now have 8 people who are not only certified, but have completed a 12-month program that's designed to meet the needs of Rochester schools and Rochester students. And it gives us then a group that can be considered for principalships in Rochester City Schools. We are recruiting for the 2nd cohort now, and the idea is, rather than having to hire from outside of the area, contributing to potential churn, that we would seek to find the answers in Rochester and to provide the kind of support and ongoing professional development and coaching for our teachers and our employees, and indeed that we start to build those pipelines right from our students through our adults, so that we can engage in very high quality and continued support for the kind of quality employees that we need to be able to improve Rochester schools. I'm going to turn it over to Everton, who's now going to get into some of the more specifics.
Yes.
Thank
You, Superintendent. President White and Vice President Powell and commissioners and everyone that's in the audience. Just want to walk you through now, the financial side of the things that you just heard the superintendent talked about. And first I wanted to just walk us through the process that we are going to go through. The process and the investment and the overview. We're going to talk about the enrollment. We're going to talk about the staffing, then get into the numbers, the dollars and cents on the revenue and the expenditure, and showing you how we are presenting a balanced budget tonight, as well as how we balance the budget and the strategies we use. Also to let you know that some of the things that you're seeing, there's one item that we have that's going to impact the schools, but as you heard Superintendent Barbara Dean Williams mention, as it relates to instructional coaches. But as we did our budget, we stayed away from the schools as much as we can. We did not touch any services to the school, so we wanted to bring that out. And the level of service that we are presenting to the school is equal and greater to what we have in this current year. And then wanted to go through the timeline as to what happens next. So the approach was, again, line-by-line budget, upfront involvement with the school chiefs, the deputy superintendents, the executive directors, the directors, and the principals as we put the budget together. We made sure that all the stakeholders who were part of the district and had a share in the planning were involved. In addition to that, we also used funding from the state and the federal requirement. First, prioritizing our investment based upon data. And this year is the first year that we have introduced academic return on investment. So this 2017-18 year is where we are collecting data so that we can start analyzing those data to make future decisions. But we haven't completed the year as yet, so we are going through that process. As it relates to sharing information and transparency, our team will continue to seek stakeholder input. We did meet with the PAC group, the Parent Advisory Committee. We did met with the Bilingual Educational Council. We did meet with some community input at school number 53 and garnered their input. And we're gathering those, and we are seeing how we can incorporate those into the budget. Some have already been incorporated as we listen to what everyone has to say and got those inputs. So we are looking to how we can incorporate. We can't incorporate all, but as we see pieces, as we can incorporate them. But we wanted the board and everyone to know that we didn't just put this budget together in a vacuum. We did reach out to the community to get their input. So as it relates to district budgetary action, state funding and federal funding requirements, as we went through, we made sure that Part 100, 154, and Part 200 of the Education Law, we funded those. You will notice in the budget as you go through that we again increased our reading and intervention teachers. We added 22 more reading and intervention teachers to the tune of about $2.1 million. This current year budget, we did increase reading and intervention teachers. I think it was somewhere around 100 of those we have. Counselors and social workers, again, continue to make sure that restorative service and work is needed, and that's funded. 6 additional counselors and social workers were added to the budget, about $600,000. Special ed teachers, 38 teaching positions were added to the budget this year, to the tune of about $3.5 million. In addition to the special ed teachers, we also added 11 CASE, and those are coordinators, coordinating administrators of special education, and 11 of those were added, about $1.3 million. In addition to that, we also added behavioral specialists. The district currently have 7 of those. We've added 10 new positions to the budget to make sure that we are properly funding the needs of our special ed students. Also, our ELL students, 11 FTEs were added for ESL, which is English for speakers of other languages, to about $1.1 million. So those are the services we're adding, some of the services we're adding to the schools to make sure that the students are receiving the service they need. So as it relates to our enrollment, over the years, we have seen where our enrollment have dropped, and in the past, you've seen it decrease significantly. But for the upcoming year, we have seen where our enrollment projection is going up by about 450 students. In addition to that, you will notice that our charter school enrollment is going up also by 452 students. So when you combine both of those, we know that Rochester has seen an increase in K-12 students of about 900 students. Most of those are, from the storm-ridden area. We've seen students coming from Puerto Rico and Texas and all the other areas that were impacted. So while we see a 450 student increase in the district, we also noted that there is an additional 450 students that are slated to go to charter school. So as we look at the trend graphically, we see where that was going down over the years, but now we see it trending upward. As to where it's going to level out, that's yet to be seen, because the word that we have been hearing is that we are going to continue receiving more students coming in from Puerto Rico and other storm-impacted areas. Wanted to also draw the attention to charter school, that trend has gone up tremendously over the past 10, 14 years. And this year, You know, the projection is that as schools grow out, charter schools grow out, we're going to see an increase of about 450 students going to charter school. Now, we do not have any new charter school opening up for next year, but all the charters that were in place, they have the charter that they can grow out their grades, so that's where we see the additional 450 students coming into the charter school, or going to them. Now, as it relates to our FTE in the district, just to note, these FTEs are all funds, the general fund, the grant fund, and our lunch food service fund. So we see an increase of 186 FTE in the budget, and that is measured based upon the projection that we're looking at versus the numbers that we had in the system as of January 8, because we had to take a snapshot of the system so we can do our budget. So year-over-year comparison, it's 186, and you see where we're adding 131 teaching position, 9 administrative positions, civil service position, and teaching assistant. We saw a reduction in the number of paraprofessional. Again, this is all fund, not just the general fund. So as we look at the dollars, so one of the things that we have done in our budget and what we have always done is we take the number of FTEs and we price those out at average salary, and we also included any operating budget that each of the departments have been given. That also includes the schools that get their TAPU budget. So as we look at our revenue projection, our general fund current year projection is $747 million. Next year, it is projected to be going up by $19.7 million. On the special aid fund, which is our grants, we see that going down by $15 million. It's because there are competitive grants that we go for every year, and as a result of that, we should not prudently budget for those grants that we know are ending, because we have to reapply for those grants and we might not get those grants. So we have seen a reduction in our level of grant. As it relates to food service, marginal increase, about $460,000. So our overall budget, adjusted budget for the current year, $900 million, and it's projected to go up to $905 million next year. As it relates to our revenue, $4.6 million, that's what we are projecting. Expenditures, we see where our general fund expenditures are going up by $71.88 million, while our special aid fund, again, going down by $15.5 million. Just to point out at this point in time that there are some grants that we have, whereas the grant goes away because of the need for many of the positions in those grants, we carry those positions in our general fund, because it would not be prudent that because we are on a trajectory and we've seen some growth, that we eliminate those positions. So we made a concerted effort to convert some of those positions from the grant fund to the general fund, because we want to make sure that the students are receiving the same level of service or a greater level of service that we have been provided year over year. As it relates to where the revenue is coming from, here we see our foundation aid is going up by $6.3 million. Our formula aid, 5.68, and our formula aid are those aids that we spend the money the current year and we get reimbursed for those expenditures that we spend, like transportation aid, like special services for CTE. We have to spend the money up front, and then the next year they reimburse us for that. So this number is based upon what we are currently doing this year, that we are getting the grant for the reimbursement for next year. As it relates to the foundation aid, that is an amount that should be based upon a formula, but as you all know, the formula has not been implemented with fidelity by the state, so we have been going to the state year over year asking them to implement the formula. As it relates to our building aid, again, based upon our facilities modernization program, we're going to get those expenditures reimbursed for a total amount for our state funding. Now, wanted to point out, and we have talked about this year over year, our city revenue That amount of $119 million has been that way since 2004. And we cry every year because that has been that way, and hopefully as we move forward, we will see that change. So also wanted to point out our appropriated fund balance. This year, when we did our budget, we closed our budget with a $20 million appropriation from our fund balance. During the year, we have adjusted that down to $17.5 million. As of the point that we did put this presentation together and close out the budget, because we had to close everything out to put it into the system so that we can run our numbers, we had planned to use $10 million of our fund balance. We have subsequently had discussion with the board and the executive team, and we plan on using more than $10 million. So at this point in time, we had $10 million. So as we go through how we close the budget gap, you will see where we have used an additional amount to assist us in closing our budget gap. But I wanted to point out that at this point in time, it was prior to us having the discussion with the board and the executive team about closing the budget gap that we have. And we are going to go through the budget gap that we have. On the expenditure side, here is where you're seeing the differences in terms of salary, compensation, employee benefit, debt services as it relates to our bonding, cash capital outlay, technology we see increase, and again, pointing out contingency fund, we had at that point in time a $3.35 million. Again, you will see as we close the budget gap that that's one of the actions that we have been directed to do and use to close our budget gap as we talked with the board and our executive team. Again, just the explanation as to where the funding is coming from. So, as it relates to our budget gap, I know originally when we did the presentation, we had the budget gap, and one of the things I pointed out when we had that budget gap is that's how we had rolled the numbers and all the requests were coming in. This is actually, after we have gotten the requests, loaded them in our budget system, because when we did the analysis before, it's what we had on our spreadsheet using those numbers. But this is what we actually have in our budget planning system, our expenditures. And again, this is as of 3/21. We had a meeting, I think the day after that, and talked about some gap closure items. Our expenditures, $819 million. Our revenues, $757 million. And this is only for the general fund. All the special aid fund, which are grants, those are self-balancing. Our food service program, again, self-balancing. We cannot use the food service or the grants to balance our general fund. So the general fund is where we have our budget gap, and that's what we manage. So as a result of that, again, the $10 million appropriation at that point in time gives us a budget gap of $52.1 million. With that $52.1 million, here are the things that we have put in place to balance the budget. Again, these haven't been posted to the budget system at this point in time, again, because we had to extract information to get our budget book and everything prepared. So as soon as we got the budget book prepared, we now go back in the system and start making these adjustments. But we wanted to bring to the board and the community how we've done that. Anticipated additional foundation aid. Based upon the House and the Senate and the Assembly One House bill, there is additional increase that's been requested by the One House bill to the tune of 800, I think it's 83 or 87 million dollars. The governor had $767 million in his budget for education, and the Senate is asking to increase that to $1.2 billion. The Assembly is asking to increase that to $1.5 billion. So what I did, is to take the number and see what percentage of that we had gotten and extrapolated that out if it was supposed to be distributed evenly, then what's the additional aid that we would be getting based upon the additional increase. We took the lower end and we took the higher end and we balanced that out. So we are anticipating to get about an additional $8.2 million. As it relates to the school health service, every year the governor cuts that amount out of the budget, and based upon negotiation, And Assemblyman David Gant has always managed to get us that $1.2 million back. As I went through and read the one House bill, both the Senate and the Assembly is asking that that be restored. So we have very high hopes, I'd say 100%, that that is going to be restored to the governor's budget. As it relates to community school grant rollover, the governor's budget also directed the Commissioner Ilya, to make available whatever fund is not spent in the community school grant, that the schools can roll those over. Basically, because of the timing that they have given us to spend that money and the timing that they have released it, many of the school districts, especially the large school districts, have not been able to expend the funds, so they're giving us the opportunity, and they've reappropriated that for next year. Using an additional $10 million to close the budget gap. So overall, our revenue adjustment is about $20 million, the $19.9 million. Last time we did a presentation, we gave each of the department what we call a maintenance of effort of $15 million. So all of the departments, other than the schools, are going through and looking at efficiencies and cost savings and reduction to the tune of $15 million. And as I said before, if we balance the budget, pushing everyone to meet their target, and as I mentioned last week, is that if we don't, then we may have to do a slight adjustment based upon any shortfall that we have. The budget department has still continued to look at efficiency beyond what we have to close the budget, that in the event some of this doesn't follow. So we haven't just stopped because we say we close the gap. We continue to look for efficiencies because some of these numbers may or may not materialize, so that's why we constantly look for efficiencies. We look at our BOCES and other contract services where we have in the budget. Some of the services, we're looking at the BOCES services to taking those down to the tune of not just BOCES, but other contractual services, about $6 million. Benefits, again, analyzing our benefits, mainly because of health. We are self-funded, so we are looking at ways to reduce expenditures to the tune of $2.6 million. Instructional coaches, as you heard the superintendent talked about, this is the one thing that we have where we're looking at, and that is going to have a direct impact on the schools. And as you see, when we go through the other slides, you'll see that additional funding come in. That is one of the main things that we're looking to restore. But right at this time, that's something that we have been looking at. Reduction of the contingency. We had a contingency in the the budget that you saw of $3 million, 3.35. 350,000 of that is related to the East EPO, so we haven't touched that. But we are reducing the contingency by the $3 million with the understanding that in the event that an emergency comes up, we will come to the board for a resolution to utilize our fund balance to close that need. We look at temporary staff through agencies, to reduce that by $1.5 million. Professional development in certain areas, only $800,000 reduction. And, other efficiencies that we have looked at with a total expenditure reduction for $32.2 million. When we achieve this, I don't want to say if, when we achieve this, all those targets being met, we have closed our budget gap. So, talked about some items that we had on the table, and those things, as we went through and look at items that we would restore when additional funding comes in through either through foundation aid or special service aid. We have 3 teacher on assistant position at high school level that directly working to improve graduation rate, restoration of the 2 athletic directors in our school because we're expanding this service that we are delivering in terms of sports. The 20 instructional coaches, 10 ELA and 10 math coaches, getting those back in the schools. And as we look through, you heard the superintendent talk about the next generation learning, to get 10 coaches to make sure we can deliver those services in the school. And, other things that we have are just, an AP, adding an AP back into the system. So these are just other things that we are looking to restore. Now, as it relates to the presentation that we had last week, we went through and looked at certain tiers as to what's closest to the school and what's furthest away. So one of the things we talk about was transportation. We are looking at transportation efficiencies, but to let you know at this point, we have not done anything to reduce any transportation in terms of impacting after-school programs. Our students that are traveling, we're transporting less than 1.5 miles. We know that that's very important to our students and our district, so we are carrying those, looking at any other possible transportation efficiency. Central office staff, we continue to review those to see where we can realign staff to make sure that we are being efficiently as possible with the resources that we have in central office. OASIS, still looking at OASIS to make sure that they are adequately funded, and any additional funding that we can put towards the OASIS program to make sure services being delivered. We are looking at those. We talk about the Teaching Learning Institute expanded program to make sure that we have teachers in the pipeline that we can deliver the right services. And also, one of the things that was on our red list last time was facilities contract services, and that's mainly as it relates to plumbing, snow plowing. We are still looking how we can negotiate better rates, better contracts. So while we are putting those back in, we are still trying to see how we can get better rates as we move forward. So those are the things that we're looking at closing the budget gap with as we go through for the year. Again, the budget with those items have been closed, and that's why we wanted to make sure that the board is assured that we have done everything to close the budget gap that we have. Going forward, this is the timeline. So from today, as Vice President Powell mentioned, that questions will be submitted in writing, and we have board deliberations, open public sessions. There are 2 public sessions, and there are 3 board deliberations, and the board will be submitting questions, and we will be turning those around in the time that has been allotted for those. I also wanted to point out at this point in time that the board is scheduled to adopt the budget on May 15th. Subsequent to that, we have to get the budget over to the city, and they need 33 days before they vote on the budget. So we are way within the timeline of doing that. So there's a budget hearing at the city on June 13th. That's a key date that has been set by the city with the plan to approve the budget on June 19th. So that's the schedule that we have going forward, and that's where we are. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everyone, the superintendent and the board and the executive cabinet, the budget team, and everyone who has worked diligently in giving us input, providing their time and resources through all those long nights and weekends to get us to this point. So we appreciate all that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Thank you, all of you who have put in many, many nights and weekends to come to this result. For the media present, keep in mind that we did, the budget gap is not a reflection of only of a go-forward budget doing exactly the same things next year that we did last year, or this current year. That there were specific items in our initial budget that were new asks, but they were asks that basically said, we can't really do the job without these items,
right.
Particularly specialized individuals, coaches to help coach our teachers and principals in the curriculum, for example, counselors, the English as a second language learners that the teachers required that's driven by our changing circumstances, especially the incoming new students from both Puerto Rico and Texas.
Yes.
I believe that we're looking at an admirable effort, one that is causing everyone to sacrifice to bring us to that balanced number of 0 at the bottom of the page. Our next deliberation session, as you see there, is April 9th. Are the budget books going to be available to us downstairs?
Yes, I think the
And
cards, they have them on the cards.
We will be
outside.
going into executive session. We can pick up our budget books at that time. And the first round of questions that we're looking for feedback from board members will cover sections 1, 2, and 3. Those are basically the overview, the revenue stream, and the overview expenditure items. I don't have the Callie, do you have the date that those written questions are due? I'm sorry? Okay, so we're going to be receiving the budget book tonight. The first round questions are due on Monday. So guess what we're all going to be doing all weekend long? So just as you all have been putting in nights and weekends, we, on this side of the table, our nights and weekends are just beginning. So thank you so much for all your diligence and your efforts. Mr. President?
Just briefly, it sounds redundant, but it is clearly appropriate to thank you, Everton and Barbara, and all those folks that I know put in significant hours to produce this result. Is we sort of don't talk about the elephant in the room. I think it is appropriate to discuss the effort and capacity of our staff to do something that some people thought was impossible. I mean, this is a $65 million budget deficit, and so words cannot express the appreciation that we have for you and your staff to eliminate that burden from our table, because we have many in the district, and this is a significant one. And this, having addressed that, that will allow us to address and move forward on other issues. So again, I know Vice President Powell, who is the expert on district finances and the board's supervision of those responsibilities. I just want to communicate on behalf of the Board of Education, thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't thank the EPO and their staff. They too have contributed mightily to this effort, and as they have done in the past, they have made appropriate cost savings and redirect them back to the city, school district. We appreciate that as well. So we have other business, folks, and come on in, young folks. Hello. Hello. Hey. Anybody else want to make comments?
Other than to just say thank you. Thank you again.
Okay, I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss a contractual issue as well as to discuss student disciplinary issues.
So moved.
Been moved by Vice President Powell, seconded by?
Second.
I think I heard Commissioner Hallmark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
For those folks of you who are board gladiators, we will be adjourning from downstairs in the second floor once we come out of executive session. Good night, everybody.